All right. Hello, everyone. And I can't imagine anyone's watching or listening, but welcome to year 2 of me doing a podcast. I'm changing up the look, changing up the feel. It's called Fantasy Football Science. Um, I am DLP. If you are watching, thanks for watching. I believe this is going to be the first video of 2023 for me. It's been a pretty busy off season, not just in the NFL, but mainly for me. I have not had a lot of time to record podcasts at all. I thought about even editing videos, but this is the best I can do for now, giving you basically PowerPoints combined with just recording on Zoom. So peek at the new logo here. Okay, Fantasy Football Science. I've probably talked about this before, but I am a science teacher, and something I noticed in teaching science to students, the way we do it, I thought could be applied to fantasy football and like how we approach fantasy football, at least from a like more scientific perspective. I'm going to get into all that here in a second. We are waiting for 5 more people to jump into a Best Ball Mania 4 draft. This will only be my second one. I'm currently in one right now. It's a slow draft. I haven't been drafting that much. A Superflex big board came out. I never did that. Even the big board I didn't do much of. Currently we have... Where do I go to see my other drafts? Currently we have, these are all my past ones. Here's drafts completed. See, I've only completed 2 drafts, 1 puppy draft and 1 Best Ball Mania 4 draft. Oh, this is pre-draft best ball. I only did 3 big boards. So I haven't drafted that much. I mean, that's pretty evident by the fact that I haven't really recorded many podcasts. But we're looking to do it some more. As the first video of the year, I'm trying to kind of establish, how I'm approaching, approaching fantasy football this year. And, I think last year was pretty successful. And so going to try to build off of that success. I can't remember if I've said this before, but, I did pretty well in terms of my best ball results, just for only being my second year into it. My best ball results were pretty good. I was in the black, which is nice, especially as someone who's not like putting like loads of money into this. I think that was good. And then in my home leagues and my other like redraft leagues, I did pretty well. So I hadn't jumped in that many drafts, but as you can see on the left here, I've got tons and tons of puppy drafts going. Literally it opened like maybe a week and a half ago and it was already 80% full, so I freaked out and was like, well, let's just jump into a bunch of slow ones. I can kind of go over some of those drafts later, but for now I want to just stick to this Best Ball Mania 4 entry. I was hoping that this would get started a little bit faster, but it doesn't look like it is. So let me kind of explain and jump into my process and how I'm kind of adjusting it this year. I'm making my approach a little bit more explicit, a little bit more concrete. And if you're watching and you want to use some of this stuff, by all means, if what I'm saying makes sense, by all means, use it in your own approach to fantasy football this year. But once again, I teach science, specifically biology, but as you go through the credentialing program, you learn about how to teach students and how to get them to approach science and hopefully life scientifically. And so one of the things we instill is knowledge, skills, and basically like how to think. And so we want, depending on which science you teach, the knowledge you're going to be teaching is a little bit different. There's obviously going to be some things that overlap amongst all sciences, but for the main part, like if you're in chemistry class, the knowledge you'll be gaining is the knowledge of, chemistry. To me, that stuff is a little less important than the other two, which are the skills that we build in students, and an approach, a way of thinking, of how to think, to logically process or approach something that they're unfamiliar with. And I think it's those other two, the skills and processing, that helps students outside of the classroom and outside of science, makes them better informed decision makers, especially when those decisions influence other people. Kind of off on a tangent there, but that's basically what we try to do. We try to instill, these skills, this way of thinking, and a knowledge base within students to make them the best human beings they can be, the best thinkers they can be, the best, scientists they can be, to approach life a little bit more scientifically. And so I thought about that, I kind of made a connection here as to, well, if we can approach life more scientifically, right? It's outside of the classroom that we're trying to instill these skills and ways of thinking and knowledge, right? It's outside of the classroom that we think it's going to be beneficial for them as eventual adults, right? So if this should work outside the classroom and just as a way to approach life and have a perspective on life, then this should work for fantasy football, which I know sounds a little bit insane. But it's just a connection I made. Okay. And so when we talk about these skills and knowledge and ways of thinking, there are concrete, written out standards that students must meet. And so what we have in the science world are science and engineering practices. They're not necessarily called skills, but more practices that basically behaviors, things that scientists do in order to approach the world more scientifically and have as pure and objective a mind as possible when approaching something unknown. So, for example, you need mathematical and computational thinking. You have to have a little bit of knowledge of how, of mathematics and how to calculate with numbers and reading graphs and understanding those sorts of things in order to, engage in a science. DCIs are what's called disciplinary core ideas. That's just the content. Are you learning bio? Are you learning physics? Are you learning chemistry? Are you learning about Earth and space? Are you learning about, astrophysics? Whatever. And then CCC stands for cross-cutting concepts, basically ideas that are common themes amongst all the sciences. So it's a way to, make connections, cross-cutting concepts, make connections, and be able to organize the ideas in a particular way. So things like patterns and cause and effect, stability and change, these are things that we see in all of the sciences and should help, help people understand what they're seeing, right? So the way I've basically applied that to fantasy football is, instead of science and engineering practices, it's fantasy football practices. And there are a variety of them. Mathematics and mathematical and computational thinking, that's another thing that you should probably have some skills in order to truly understand statistics in general, right? I think at a very basic level, a lot of people might not understand statistics, especially average players, but especially when you get into advanced statistics, even something as simple as percentiles, which sounds, I don't know, simple to me. Maybe it sounds simple to you, but that's not necessarily a fully understood concept among the average person, which seems hard to believe, but I feel like is true. Disciplinary core ideas now becomes fantasy football fundamentals. basically stuff to know, right? So fantasy football practices goes over things you should do and practice in order to become hopefully successful. At least this is what I believe. At least so far, this is what I found. That these things, if you do these things, you can be successful in fantasy football. Fantasy football fundamentals are things you need to know. So, for example, knowledge of rookies, not being afraid of them, injury knowledge. There's a lot of different things to know. It's definitely the biggest of the dimensions here. We call them dimensions. So of the 3 dimensions, it's definitely got the most things, because I just think there are a lot of important things to know, a lot of important rules, general rules to follow, universal guidelines, I guess you could call them. But that's how I kind of describe fantasy football fundamentals. And then lastly, fantasy cross-cutting concepts becomes like fantasy football schema. Schema basically is like a way of thinking, a process of thinking. And so fantasy football schema is very similar to cross-cutting concepts. A lot of these overlap. Things like patterns, things like cause and effect, stability and change. Systems is one of my favorites, which means, one thing. I cannot believe this, man. Breece Hall was the guy I wanted so bad. So ways of thinking, right? Ways of organizing your thinking, ways of organizing your logic to better understand it and to better process things. And so I've adapted these, and I have a document full of all these different fantasy football practices, fundamentals, and schema. I'll put a link in the description for that if you want to check that out, because I already have tons of practices, fundamentals, and schema already loaded, basically. The thing to know about this is your goal should be to try, when you prepare for fantasy football, and for myself, I prepare a lot more than the average player, but when you do prepare, you'd like to try and do different things that hits one of each of the 3 dimensions of fantasy football. And so we want to hit a practice, a fundamental, and a schema, right? And you could, some of these might overlap. You might be using more than one at once. Obviously we're trying to use one from each, but you might be using 2 from. You could probably expand it out to like 8 fundamentals at once. I haven't actually tested that out yet, but you probably, just theoretically, I believe you could, expand it out to like 8 fundamentals at once, while also doing like 2 or 3 schemas and 2 practices. These things will overlap. It's not necessarily so black and white in terms of how these things are combined to be used. But today I'll be focusing on just 3, one from each, just to kind of simplify what I'm talking about, and to kind of introduce listeners, watchers, and kind of talk it through myself, just to kind of simplify things and to kind of show and introduce these dimensions for the first time here in 2023. So today, I think it's important to focus on this. By engaging in a fantasy football draft here, in an underdog best ball draft, we are developing and using draft strategies. Now, some people like to use models and stuff like that. I haven't done anything like that, but people like JJ Zacharyson, Scott Barrett, follow them on Twitter if you haven't. They're great. Late round draft guide, rookie guide is always great. Scott Barrett always releases. He always just has great information for me, and has tons of articles on Fantasy Points. Check those guys out. They do models and stuff like that. It's still important for us to develop and use draft strategies. Okay, knowing what we like, right? There might be an objective optimal draft strategy out there for a particular year, and I believe that could change year over year. So, for example, right now, underdog best ball drafts, I mean, they were extremely wide receiver heavy last year, and they seem to be drifting even further in that direction. And it doesn't seem to be letting up. So, for example, here, One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 of the first 12 picks were wide receivers. 10 of the first 14. Wide receivers are really, really going high in drafts on Underdog. And so last year, even though a heavy RB team, like Pat Kerrane won the whole thing with Eckler and Barkley, and yet somehow wide receivers just keep going higher. But maybe the optimal draft strategy this year, even though the popular thing the last few years has been zero RB, maybe it's now RB, right? Like go and get a few RBs that just don't get taken. We shall see, I guess. But if you don't find an objective draft strategy that helps, that's optimal, you should be finding one that you like, right? Like the biggest reason I love doing these underdog drafts is I get an idea of like who's going where, and that kind of leads into one of the fantasy football fundamentals. And this is something I put into my game plan last year. Is factoring in average draft position. ADP matters. If you're going to completely disregard it, I think that's a mistake. And I think it should be, somewhat heavily factored into how you draft. And doing so many best ball drafts last year really was helpful in understanding, like, okay, I like certain players, and, go and get those players that you like, but you can also take advantage of like mispriced players, and it kind of drifts you away from player takes, which are so easily wrong, and gets you just a little bit closer to the right player for the right price. And that's so factoring that in and getting the right player for the right price, that kind of seamlessly transitions into process over results, the final cog here, but basically the way of thinking that I like to have is process over results. Okay, this is something you'll have heard in fantasy football, I'm sure a number of times before. But the idea is basically, the results are out of our control. Your process should still be optimal. I don't know how to explain that. I don't know what word to use, but your process should be correct. So assume, sometimes it's okay to assume you're right, and sometimes it's okay to, bake in like a little bit of the fact that you're wrong. But the thing I liked about average draft position is, and factoring that, and using that to help build your draft strategy, is it made my process a little bit more objective rather than so subjective. I can get really swept up in certain takes, and it can affect my drafting and my fantasy football results. So last year, Matt Ryan was a guy that I was like, well, if Carson Wentz can be the quarterback 14, maybe Matt Ryan can be. Yeah, then Matt Ryan should be a shoo-in, right? Like almost top 12 guy. And that I don't think was looking at things objectively. That was just terrible process, right? Assuming one player is going to do better simply in a similar situation, even though they weren't the same player, not truly knowing how far Matt Ryan had fallen off, or how bad the offensive line was. So all in all, the goal here is to, develop and use draft strategies, to, have a knowledge of ADP, continue to have that knowledge of ADP, and then use process over results. And you can see how they kind of intertwine here. So how am I developing and using draft strategies in this draft so far? Something you obviously want to try to do is kind of, is stack. So I'm going for I got a little bit of ADP luck, on Christian McCaffrey, whatever. I think, in San Francisco, he's been amazing. I'll take him. And after I take him, right, I assume that I just got the number one running back in the draft, at the end of 2023, 2024. And so I'm going to stack Christian McCaffrey. And the reason I like him, and then the reason I picked Kittle with my last pick, which is I was picking between him and Pittman. And if Pitts makes it to me, I will be very, very sad that I took Kittle. But what I was thinking was, Darnold, Lance, Purdy, they're all cheap. They're all really, really cheap because no one really knows who's going to play. Purdy might take over, but I'm in the Trey Lance, or I'm actually secretly in the Darnold train, man. Like, Darnold, I think, could play in this San Francisco offense and really, really shine. If Kyle Pitts falls here, do I take him? I might. Come on. We're pausing the action here because Kyle Pitts might fall to pick 69 here. How many teams have Kittle, Pitts? It's definitely possible. But, look at this team so far. I'm not mad. Come on. Let's go. Is this the right idea? I don't like any of the wide receivers around here except for Jahan Dotson. I'm going to go Kyle Pitts. Okay, so one of the things that I just didn't do enough of last year was getting elite access to some of the onesie positions. And I've kind of weirdly doubled up at, running back and tight end here, but especially an underdog, just getting the elite quarterback or the elite tight end. So I really did think about Kelsey at running back. I'm sorry, Kelsey at number 4. There goes Anthony Richardson at 71. This is interesting to me. God, I hate him, but it is interesting. What are the wide receivers that we're going to pick? The wide receivers sure do get eaten up. Where did I see Elijah Moore? Oh, I'm on the clock. I'm cool with this. Man, I do not like him, but it's just kind of makes some sense. Okay, so next year, or this year, the strategy is get elite ceilings, some of those onesie positions like quarterback and tight end. I think I've kind of done that here, and at quarterback and tight end, I've done it at a reasonable price. I still got Christian McCaffrey. I'm in on stacking the 49ers because they're cheap. I've even got a triple stack here, or I guess it's a double stack with Kittle. I'm probably not getting. I think Ayuk's already gone. He should be. But I should be getting, another stack here. I've got Chubb. I've got Watson. I'm probably going to go get Elijah Moore. I can get Cedric Tillman pretty cheap. And then my 2 wide receivers here, Olave and London, they just came. Oh, I also got Pitts. Could go Ritter here. Olave and London, they've got super easy schedules, at least win percentage wise, coming into the year. I do actually factor that in, and that might be a new fantasy football fundamental, is just knowing who's playing who. Because last year, part of the reason, not the only reason, but part of the reason why I believed in the Eagles so much is their schedule was so soft coming into the year. And guess what? That's exactly what played out. At the end of the year, everyone was like, wow, the Eagles played a really soft schedule. And it's like, yeah, we knew that coming in, because guess what? The rosters are basically set right after the end of day 3 of the draft. So it's kind of, advantageous to go and get an Olave or a Saints team, a player, or a Atlanta player. Stacking Atlanta's not a bad idea here. And you can see as this draft is going on that the wide receiver love. It runs deep. I haven't gotten too out of the ordinary with ADP here, which I really like. In fact, I think I'm maybe an overall plus in ADP value gained. I'm going to hammer wide receiver here. Running back is not even an option. And I'm not taking another tight end because I feel extremely good about these guys' ability to sustain. I really like Rashad Bateman. I really like Jameson Williams, Elijah Moore, and Jameson Williams. The ADP is pretty low because of the suspension, which is totally fine. I think the hope here is Bateman. I'd also be okay with Quentin Johnston. But Bateman maybe for the reverse stack with Cleely. Who was that? That was Johnston. Perfect. We're hoping for Bateman here. Bateman. Tua's a guy I really like around this area. Like if you get Tyreek Hill, like Tua just is like so late. And you just need some like some spike weeks. That's all you really need. I'm gonna go Bateman. Everyone is obviously on the Zay Flowers train, and I get it. I understand why people like Zay Flowers, but Rashad Bateman's a first-round wide receiver as well. This is a guy who was taken around the same spot as Zay Flowers. I don't remember exactly, but I'm imagining it's in the 20s. On Bateman, at least, I think Flowers is like 22 or something. And I really believe in the Ravens this year. You know, Todd Monken, the new offensive coordinator, should really spread things out for Lamar. I'm really excited to see what happens in Baltimore. I have to figure out what's going to happen if I don't get Elijah Moore. We cry if we don't get Elijah Moore. This guy better not take Elijah Moore, man. Okay. I'm not hating this draft at all. So I'm really excited to see what's going to be cooking in Baltimore. Go take Lamar Jackson at quarterback 4. Pretty dang cheap. We're a few picks in here. I'm feeling really good about the players I've got. I'm going to keep hammering wide receiver here. We obviously want maybe Ritter. That's just a big maybe, but I like Darnold and Lance here at some point. I don't think this guy's going to last to me. I'm 14 picks away. 116. Let's see what happens. I kind of like Rashad Penny here. Mooney. He brought Jacoby Myers over for a reason. He's not going to play him. Scamore, James Jones. There's a lot of other receivers I like late here. Gallup. Like, I can't believe Gallup is going so late. Downs, I'm really in on. I'd be okay with this and this. I like this. Dude was good last year. Okay, so there's Purdy at 196, which I'd be okay with letting go because Darnold is here at 215. I really like. There's Lance at 169. That's weird. That's weird that Lance is the favorite. I would have thought people would be way off. I'm a Lance believer simply because I think he's going to get first crack. And Daniel Jones. Man, I'm talking to myself. I know a lot of players here. But Daniel Jones, his situation only got better. He was a top 12 quarterback last year. Had some really nice spike weeks. Is Daniel Jones the move? If Daniel Jones falls to me, I'm taking him and I'm stacking him with a damn. There he went. A-Chain got taken, right? Yeah. I'm probably not going Penny. Lazard is interesting. I do like Damian Harris. Am I going running back? I'm at 117. Yeah. That might have been my first mistake. But I can't decide. I can feel the wheels coming off here. Of this podcast. I might just call it early. But the plan here is to keep hammering wide receiver. I just need a lot more. I got to go wide receiver here, 124. I'm going to pick again at 141. Makes me feel good about Gallup. But if Penny falls, man, like, do I not take Penny? Taking Penny, right? Jared Goff, dude, this guy's. This will be I guess I'll have Jared Goff in other drafts, but Jared Goff getting disrespected right now. Goff is. He's got a soft schedule. I mean, he's set up incredibly well to succeed. You know, he's upgraded at running back. He's upgraded at wide receiver, you know, with Jameson Williams eventually coming back. Maybe he did get a downgraded wide receiver, but he got an upgrade somewhat at tight end with Laporta, right? At least compared to post-Hawkinson world. And his offensive line is still good. I mean, he's got a better defense. Goff should just be money. So if you took Amon-Ra, don't blame you. This guy has Allen, Herbert, Rodgers, Goff. Hey, do your thing, man. Do your thing. So I've probably delved into countless fundamentals here. You know, you could even talk about systems. For another cross-cutting concept. What else? I'd have to go back and look at some of the other ones. I know I don't remember all of them off the top of my head right away, but it's late. It's been a long day. If you've listened thus far, thank you so much. I mean, you're crazy, but I appreciate you. If no one's listening, then hey, that's okay. I'm only doing this for me to kind of talk myself through fantasy football strategy, and you know, just try to be as successful as I can with this crazy game. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more fantasy football science.